So it is no secret to everyone in the FGC, we got a ton of news about Riot's new fighting game, good old Project L. And as shown here, whenever I do videos on Project L, they tend to do pretty dang well. I mentioned before in a very recent video discussing the potential of Capcom experimenting with simple inputs in the future based off of their earlier experiments with Falk and Ed. But the topic has come to mind numerous times since the Project L reveal about how we as a fighting game community feel about simple input schemes and simple input characters in fighting games. So as you can see, the input scheme pretty simple as far as fighting games are concerned. An anti-air with down the button, combos with just button and another button. Let's have a real quick look at these like inputs real quick, like their abbreviations. So there's an S1 here, meaning probably special one. And then down in special one is like an anti-air of sorts, at least for this character, for Darius. And then there's special one and attack one. So if I had to guess, based off of this, it's probably going to be a 6-button fighter. There's going to be 3 special buttons. There's going to be an S1, an S2, and an S3. And there's going to be an attack 1, attack 2, and attack 3. The attack 1, 2, and 3 will probably be like light, medium, and heavy attacks. And then the different special moves will just have different variations depending on what direction that you're pressing, as we saw before. An S move could be anything from like this long reaching thing to like an anti-air variation. So every special move will have like 3 or so variations. This game will potentially be a 6-button fighter, or potentially even an 8-button fighter if you consider what the bindings for assists are probably going to be. Assists could be anything from just like an extra 2 buttons on like the far side. So say like we're like 4th punch and the 4th kick buttons, those could be like an assist 1 and assist 2, and maybe each character provides like multiple different assists. I think that would be pretty cool. Or it could be like a multi-button binding, like a attack 1 and special 1, or attack 2 special 2, or something along that sort of variation. Whenever people saw these inputs right here, people got really turned off by not only just like the fact that this is a game with like super like simple like 1-button special moves and attacks, but also that it's a tag fighter. But I definitely think that Project L occupies a very special niche in the fighting community by being a game with simple inputs and also having tag mechanics, and I will get into that a little bit later. Designing a fighting game around the idea of having 1-button normal attacks and 1-button special moves, it requires different design concepts and different design approaches than what most fighting games tend to come from. We've seen simple input styles work in previous fighting games. A good example would be good old Granblue Fantasy Versus had a special button that was also tied to specific directions for certain special moves. So you could do like say a normal special and it gives you like a fireball, and then you do like up special or down special and you get like a DP, forward special you get like a lunging attack, like that sort of thing. And the way how it worked in like the whole grand scheme of Granblue Fantasy Versus in terms of, like, of how it approached design is that all the special moves were on cooldowns. So if you use the simple input scheme, it had a longer cooldown, but if you did the actual special motion, like the DPs or the quarter circles, then they had a quicker cooldown. But even with that didn't completely negate the use of simple input schemes in Granblue Fantasy Versus meta entirely. There was still a place to use like the simple input for like anti-airs and DPs and stuff. It just frees up your mental stack to do that. And I think Granblue Fantasy Versus is like the pinnacle as far as a hybrid simple input and traditional input style for fighting game design. What Project L is trying is to not necessarily go the hybrid simple and traditional input approach, but to go the full simple approach, but still have that extra layer of complexity and depth that a fighting game can offer. And I think for that reason alone is the reason why they decided to make this a tag team fighter. Because there are plenty of simple input games on the market right now where you just press a button and get a special move and you have like all your normals and stuff like that. Fantasy Strike fits into that mold perfectly, in fact. And I think Project L wants to differentiate itself in the fighting game ecosystem by doing something that hasn't really been done, having a full simplified fighting game with a tag team system. And the reason why I specify that so specifically is because there is another fighting game that has tried a hybrid, simple and traditional input style that also has tag mechanics. And some of you guys in the chat may not have mentioned it, but the game I'm thinking of is BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle occupied a very interesting space in the fighting game landscape for as short of a time it's spent in it. But this is a game that was very heavily built around like a target combo system for attacks, like A into like a different like button into a special move into something else. This game was like almost like fully built around auto combos, but they just work in terms of like the pure combo structure of the game. There are other fighting games out there with chain combo systems that can kind of get close to replicating what it is that you're seeing here, but not many of them are as reliant on what we would traditionally refer to as auto combos, as the continued pressing of the same button to get a particular attack sequence, as cross tag. While I don't think that Project L is going to exactly be going as much of like the auto combo route as BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle is, I think it's worth noting the fact that there aren't too many simple fighting games out there right now that are tag fighting games. I think that's part of like a huge reason why Project L, with its vast roster of characters, with the vast amount of characters available to them in their IP, why they would opt to not limit themselves to just be a simple 2D fighter, but also be a simple 2D tag team fighting game. As far as like fighting game players go, we tend to often stay pretty closely within like a given sector of the fighting game genre. Like some of us will be like primarily 2D fighting game players or 3D fighting game players, like your Tekken and Soul Calibur players, or you'll maybe be like a tag fighting game player. Like there are tag fighters that we have mentioned a couple different times in the chat so far. We have mentioned Dragon Ball FighterZ, we have mentioned BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, we've mentioned a couple other tag team fighters as well, MVCI, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but none of them are currently fighting games for this current generation, for this current series of fighting games to come out on PC, PS5, Xbox Series X. And I think Riot has noticed that, and they are going to try and fill in that gap. This game appears to like has an interesting sort of combo structure from what we've seen at like bare minimum. It doesn't appear to be like an auto combo system, but there does appear to be like certain strings to it. Like we saw from Darius's inputs that he has the ability to combo a special into one of his a specific special into one of his normals, and it can combo several of his normals into his specials. There's still a whole lot of uncertainties about how this game's combo structure generally works, and until we get proper notation for how the normals work from like the grand scheme of things, I think it's safe to say that this game will probably have like a more chain focused combo system. Most tag team games tend to operate with a chain combo system instead of like exactly linking moves into other moves, just because it helps to keep the fast pace of the game going. So there might be like a magic series of the attack buttons that might work together with each other, or maybe you could just do like a light, medium, heavy into a special button into some other stuff. And until we get like proper notation for everything, we're really just relying purely on speculation. Based on what we've seen so far and what we've seen in the past from other fighting games that have tried to do similar simple fighting game systems, I would not be surprised if a lot of BlazBlue Cross Tag players really excel at this game whenever it comes out. Keep an eye on any players who have either placed well at Cross Tag, previous Evo champions, people who have won other majors, people who have placed well at other majors. Keep an eye on those players, and if they are interested in Project L, because I would not be surprised if during the first couple betas or some of the early tournaments for this game that they start to clean up